Hello Gators, this is 4-2 isosceles and equilateral triangles, day 1. I can apply theorems about isosceles and equilateral triangles to solve problems. Let's take a look at an isosceles triangle and let's draw the angle bisector down the middle. Now at that we're going to fold. We're going to fold the right side onto the left, and we're going to find that the triangles do match. This is called rigid motion. This is called a reflection. This proof is the basis for the following theorem. If two sides of a triangle are congruent, then this folding happens, and then we're going to be able to get these angles right here congruent. Right here, because they fold onto themselves. Let's go ahead and use this. If two sides of a triangle are congruent, then the two angles opposite those sides are congruent. So now we know that this angle, these two sides are the congruent sides. Let me go ahead and change my color. And therefore this angle that's opposite that side, this angle is opposite this side, and this angle is opposite that side. Those angles will be congruent. So we know that this will be 28 degrees. Now that's going to help us because we know all three angles add up to 180 degrees. So this is going to be 28, 28, and 5x plus 9. So that's going to be, this is 56, 56 and 9 is going to be 65. So this will be 5x plus 65 equals 180. If we subtract 65 on both sides, that's 115, and then x will be equal to 23. Now let's take a look at this one. These two sides are congruent. If two sides are congruent, then the angles opposite them. So this angle is opposite this side, and this angle is opposite this side. So we know these two angles will be congruent. So negative 4x plus 9 equals 8x minus 3. If I add 4x to both sides, that'll be 12x minus 3. Add 3x to both sides, that's going to be 12 is equal to 12x, and therefore x is equal to 1. Let's now look at the converse. And the converse says if you have two angles of a triangle are congruent, then the sides opposite those angles are congruent. So let's take a look at this triangle. These angles are congruent. Let's again look at the angle bisector. Let's again fold onto itself, and we're going to find that it does fold perfectly, which tells us that these two sides are matching. So this side will be congruent to this side right here. Okay, so here's the theorem. The theorem says if two angles of a triangle are congruent, that's these two angles, then this side, which is opposite this angle, will be congruent to this angle is opposite this side, and that'll be congruent. So these two sides are congruent. So x plus 20 will equal 8/3 x. When I want to get rid of a fraction, I multiply by the denominator on both sides. So that'll be a 3. Multiply this by 3. So that's 3x plus 60 equals, this will reduce, and I'll have an 8x. I'm going to subtract 3x on both sides, so that's 5x. So x is equal to 12. Now, if x is equal to 12, then this side will be 32. And then 12 times 8/3, I'm going to do a little reducing. So that's 32, which that's what should happen. These two should be the same size. And then 12 times 6 is 12, carry 1, 72. And then I'm going to subtract 12, and that's 60. So this length is 60, and I have found all the lengths. If a line or line segment bisects the vertex of an isosceles triangle, then it is also the perpendicular bisector, the opposite side. So this same kind of idea, this folding idea, is going to also create some other things that we will know. If this folds onto each other, then these two sides will be congruent, and these two angles will be congruent. This angle will also be congruent to this angle when they fold onto themselves. Now, the fact that these two are congruent means that this guy is an angle bisector. And these two angles being congruent, remember the two angles that are all equal and they add up to 180, that only can happen if both of those angles are 90. And if this angle is 90, obviously we have perpendicular. Let's go ahead and use this theorem here. We have an isosceles triangle, we have an angle bisector. We know that this triangle can fold onto the other triangle, which means that this side will be congruent to this side. And we know that this angle right here has to be a right angle, because when they folding happening, that's going to be the same size. So how big is angle RSQ? RSQ? Well, we know this is 31. This will be 31. And remember that these two have to be complementary. The three add up to 180. So that angle will be 59 degrees. So that all three of these add up to 180. So that's 59 degrees. And how big is PR? Well, PR is, here is 4. We know this is 4. So altogether that will be 8. So what we've learned is if two sides of a triangle are congruent, then the angles opposite are congruent. If two angles of a triangle are congruent, the sides opposite are congruent.